The World Tomorrow. The Worldwide Church of God presents Herbert W. Armstrong.
And I'm here to bring you the truth. No one else is telling you the things that God is telling you through me. He's speaking through me.
The Lord let me experience what it is to be a new bride. You know, I'm not worried about what I'm about to say, though it may be graphic. We're coming to the Lord, and if you can take it, beyond the veil is the chamber. That's the wedding chamber. The Lord told me that.
But from then on, visions begin to come. When this comes up on me, it produces a vision. I'm able to tell people what's wrong with them, what they must do in life, and the sins that they are holding back in their life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cult Next Door podcast. Maddie here. Before we get started with today's episode, I want to remind everyone to follow us on our socials. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We also have a new way that you can connect with us. You can leave us a voice message with a question or a comment, and we may feature it on the podcast. You can find the link for this on our Instagram bio or at the top of the episode description for the episode that you are listening to right now. So if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, another streaming service, or even watching on YouTube, you can follow that link, click record, and send us a voice message. Also, as always, want to do our double portion club shoutouts. Shanda and Chase, Heather Bartlett, and Carla, thank you all for supporting the podcast. We appreciate you very much. If any other listeners want to be a part of this club, it's $10 a month. You get ad-free episodes, a shout out, and I'll send you a really cool Cult Next Door holographic sticker. We also have a $5 a month support tier, which gets you ad-free episodes and a holographic sticker. Just no shout out for that one. Also want to read a review real quick. This says, my husband and I are almost 3 years out of a very abusive church experience. So much of what you discuss on the podcast is word for word things our pastor has said to us and others. The tactics used by abusers seem to all be the same. It brings me so much comfort to know that we are not alone and that you are bravely speaking out against abuse. You are an inspiration. Thank you very much, Sarah, for that review. Okay, today's episode, we have part 1 with Mandy Jones. Mandy and her family have a very interesting path that cuts through a lot of different groups, Worldwide Church of God, offshoots, Messianic groups, and eventually their family was even part of Crusade Church for a short time. So I'm not going to give any more exposition on this. We're just going to jump right in with Mandy. So let's take a listen to part 1.
Yeah, my parents didn't start out in any churches, but they had a rough go of things. So, I mean, they fought a lot and they drank a lot. And I think that was their big appeal to joining a church, with my mom leading the way because she wasn't happy with how things were. Like, I know the church provided a lot of the tools they needed to save their marriage. So that's what they stuck it out for, I think.
What was the church?
To start with, it was a non-denominational Bible study that met on a Tuesday night, and it kind of evolved from there. They connected with a charismatic church from Florida.
Okay.
That had a bishop, and definitely is a cult.
Mm-hmm.
They came up and kind of like orchestrated changes and said, well, you should probably do this here. And, you know, if you're the leader, then you need to be doing that, you know, like reining your people in and having more control. That the leader of that church that started as the Bible study, I never viewed him as like a cult leader. So it was kind of a weird for him to turn into one. Like, looking back, I feel like any church has the capacity to turn into a cult.
Mm-hmm.
And like the biblical structure is there, you know, like that's how I've come to see it. I didn't really feel like the impact of it until I started to hit puberty. And then some of the women in the church were uncomfortable with the relationship I had with my dad. And it was never inappropriate that I know of, but they were uncomfortable. So my parents decided they had to put some distance between us. And then like clothing, you know, there was never any clothing restrictions when I was younger. When I hit puberty, it was like, okay, now you can't wear this and you can't wear that. And your body is on display. and then launched into purity culture,
Yeah.
which ended up being fairly damaging in and of itself later on. During that time, my dad worked for a guy who they were in an offshoot of the worldwide church. I think they had worldwide literature,
Mm-hmm.
and my parents started to study that and thought that that was probably for them. So they decided to meet with them on Saturdays and still go to the Bible study on Tuesdays. Eventually, the Tuesday Bible study branched out to Sundays as well. And they kind of gave my parents an ultimatum. They said, you can't do both. You have to pick Saturday or Sunday.
Which church gave the ultimatum?
The non-denominational Bible study church.
Oh, wow. Because it totally sounds like something that Worldwide would do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know they did that.
It wasn't until after they mixed with that cult that they started to say things like that to people.
You can only be part of one cult at a time is basically what they were saying. That's
basically.
So the Bible study group that your parents started, was there otherwise like any crossover or connection as far as like doctrine and theology with what they found with the other group that was more like the worldwide influence? Was this like a whole new thing that they had discovered over here on the side, or was there any kind of overlap with what they started doing with the group?
It was just they decided that whatever the Bible said was what they wanted to do. And so with meeting with the people that had the worldwide literature, the Sabbath and the holy days, they saw that in the Bible. So they decided that that was something that they wanted to include in their religious practice.
How old were you when they got the ultimatum and like you guys are going to shift to this more worldwide type? How old were you at that point?
When they gave the ultimatum, I was 16. When my parents started to cross over and do both, I was around 11. So it took a while.
You mentioned the clothing standards. What was that? Like, are we talking, long skirts and other like holiness standards, like no makeup, long hair? Like, what was that?
It was like no spaghetti straps, no sleeveless or no strapless. I mean, your straps had to be like 3 fingers wide and they had to be longer than fingertips of skirts or wear pants or shorts.
Yeah.
So it was like average Pentecostal type clothing requirements.
When the ultimatum happened, kind of walk us through like what your family did from there, obviously switching over to the more Sabbath holy day centric church. Kind of talk through like what that was like and what happened following.
We had gone to that group for 8 years and they were kind of like family. So when they handed that ultimatum down, it was really harsh. Like my mom and I had gone on a mission trip with that group, and it was on the way home in the airport that the pastor gave the ultimatum to my mom.
Oh no.
So we were like a whole reeling on the airplane thinking, how is this going to affect our life and what are we going to do? We got home and my dad wasn't with us at the time, so they had to discuss, of course. When they decided to just go with the Sabbath group, the whole leadership told everybody in the church to pretty much have nothing to do with us. We had a girls group, and the mentor for that, I was supposed to go over to her house and share my mission trip photos with her. And she was like, I'm sorry, but I have to back up the leadership and I can't do that with you anymore.
Oh, that's so sad.
So I was just like heartbroken. I mean,
Yeah.
As a mentor, you share things with your mentor and you trust them, and that was just a really big blow.
Yeah, and you were just 16
Mhm.
too. So it's not even like you really had choice in what your parents decided, what direction they decided to take the family in.
No, I didn't.
So do you know how did they make that decision between the two churches? Was it more along the lines of like a Sabbath conviction
Mhm.
that God's church would be keeping Saturday?
Yeah, it was. It was God's church would be keeping Saturday, and if we have to choose, we have to choose that.
Yeah. I'm almost surprised unless Worldwide didn't really know, I'm surprised that they were accepting of you attending both groups. Because historically, Worldwide has not been very forgiving about that either.
I think the explanation for that would be it was such a rural area, and there was no formal worldwide church structure, so it was just in their house, listening to cassette tapes
Oh, I see.
and reading
Mhm.
literature, so it
I see.
wasn't
Yeah.
controlled by that to be a thing.
Right. Okay. Yeah, understand that.
The fall before the ultimatum, my parents attended their first Feast of Tabernacles in Tennessee.
Mm.
So I think that also gave them, like, the courage to kinda step away from their other group.
Yeah.
They had some support, national support, I guess.
Okay, so then you are now fully in Worldwide and but you are still basically on your own, listening to I guess you're probably watching the telecast and things like that?
I think we were just still on, like, the cassette tapes. It
Yeah.
was
That's right. I keep forgetting because they used to do that. They would send out tapes to people. This is weird how that's just now coming back to me, but they would send out tapes for people who lived in rural areas who were not near congregations, and also like shut-ins, people who weren't able to leave. So there were a lot of people sprinkled throughout the world who were part of the church but weren't necessarily part of a specific congregation.
and it wasn't very long after the ultimatum that my parents decided that they were kind of done with the area and took us on a road trip, which, I mean, wasn't unusual. My dad drives truck, and we had done that before. But, so we just I guess I don't really know what their process was, but we just kinda went on the road trip until they found somewhere they wanted to stay, and it ended up being that that group that we spent that first Feast of Tabernacles with in Tennessee. So they weren't closely affiliated with Worldwide. They had had some bad experiences themselves, so they considered themselves independent, and I think we stayed there for 3 years before we moved back to Montana, and then so I was 19 when we left there.
So is there anything notable about that 3 years that you were there before you moved back?
Yeah, there is. While we were there, we did get a lot more conservative,
Mhm.
um, and it was partly on me because I was wanted to be a good Christian and follow the Bible as closely as possible also.
Mhm.
Making I was full all in, you know, like that was my life. Dresses only or skirts, head coverings.
Oh, wow.
My parents, we got rid of all like statuary things, like anything like dolls and figurines,
Mhm.
fake plants, just really extreme while we were there.
What was the rationale in regards to the plants? Like, I do remember, like, the anything that could be considered, like, knickknacks that could be considered, like, statuettes could be looked at or viewed at as idols. And so I kind of understand that the fake plants. I'm curious about that.
It was like a fake thing of like an imitation for God's creation, and we would
Okay.
choose to prefer God's creation over something that was not real. That, if I remember right, that was the rationale.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. I mean, it's still very out there, but I understand. I understand the rationale at least.
And not everybody in that church was on the same wavelength either. So I mean, they were very much, you choose how far you're in it.
Oh, okay.
And so long as you have the basic requirements of keeping the Sabbath and the holy days and clean and unclean meats. Outside of that, you're pretty much, on your own. Oh, and only 100% natural fibers too. That went along with it.
Oh, yeah. Yes, and did that also include not mixing fibers?
Mm-hmm. It did.
Did you guys at the time consider yourselves to be more like on the Messianic Christian side? Because I know like when we met you guys, that was our assumption, but I didn't know what that was like for you or the progression of that as like more things kind of came up. Like you said, like the fibers thing, was that like just a progression of like, well, we should do this and we should add that? Or was it more, you're taking cues from, somebody that maybe your parents found that is more like in the Messianic? Like which kind of direction do you think how that went?
I think it was a little bit of both, because there was the pastor of that church is very towards the Messianic, like use the tassels on the corners of your garments and all of that. And he's very also health oriented. So he did a whole bunch of research on like frequencies of the fabrics and all that kind of thing too.
And then if I recall too, at least for a time, it was like the beard laws too, like not rounding the corners of the beard. Am I remembering that right for your family, that was part of it?
Yeah, my dad still has full beard.
Wow.
And he's grown out his hair too. So that was
Has
in
he
the
really?
last 10 years, I think. Yeah. Yeah. So it wasn't too long after that, after we left Tennessee, that we spent our first feast with you guys at Camp Beaver Fork.
Okay, so I have to ask, how did you find Crusade Church?
I'm not sure if it was like my mom did some Google searching for different feast sites. She does that and picks one that she feels calls to her. So I think that's how. We were really close with the Drymans though too, so that might have been like they may
That's
have
right.
mentioned
I
you
forgot
guys.
about that. Yeah. So Ashley, the Dryman family came to the feast in Hot Springs. It was like maybe our second feast that we were hosting at Camp Yorktown Bay. The Dryman family came. And so, yeah, I had forgotten about that, Mandy, that
Shout out
you
to
guys
the
had that.
Drymans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that you guys had that connection to the
I'm
Drymans.
still really close with them, so I love them. They're like second family.
Hi, Mary. You guys came and visited the feast. I guess, I mean, talk about like what happened from there.
Yeah. Well, it was on the heels of a really traumatic event with like between myself and my parents. I had met this guy and decided to date him. He wasn't in the church. My mom flew off the handle so far that she's like trauma blocked it now and can't remember any of it. But I remember sitting next to him on the phone with my mom and her just telling me that I was a disappointment. And how could I be doing this? Like it was the end of the world, to be just dating this guy.
Yeah.
And it hadn't been even, the whole thing from start to finish, I dated him for 2 weeks.
Wow.
So I would come home and I would get either like the cold shoulder or scriptures wielded at me like a weapon. So, and I know it was out of fear, but it's still so harmful to wield anything like that at people you love.
Oh, yeah.
I ended up breaking it off because a different friend of mine came to me rationally and took me out and said, "Hey, this is what I know about this guy. This is what I know about you. Who do you want to be?" And so I did end up breaking off with him. And I do feel like it was a good decision. But it didn't help my relationship with my parents, and having to go back and basically apologize where I feel like, thinking back, why would they need me to apologize for being human, you know?
Yeah.
It was hard. So we were on our way to feast days after I broke up with him, and I didn't know anybody there.
And by this time you were
I was 20, going to turn 21 at the end of that year.
okay.
So you guys came to our feast in Conway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if there's anything that you can remember about that, like what was that experience like for you and for the family? I mean, I imagine it did in some ways. Did it trigger anything? Because, I mean, obviously we'll get down the road with the story where you guys were part of Crusade Church for a time, but like what was that feast like from what you can recall?
For me, coming off of that trauma, it was really warm. Everybody was really friendly. And I know it didn't always stay that way, but just like initial impressions. And I got to meet Chelsea and, of course, Sarah and Jen and Matt and Michael. And I think I spent a lot of time just kind of watching and feeling like, oh, if they only knew, I'd be so judged.
Oh.
But overall, it was a really good experience. There was one weird point that didn't make any sense at the time that does now. There was something about, we were going over songs for the fun show, I think, and Chelsea, we had to leave the auditorium because Chelsea couldn't be there at the same time Matt was.
Oh my.
Do you remember, I'm sure you do, what year this was your first visit? It would have been like 06, 7, or 8 or somewhere in there probably, right?
I think it was 2006.
Yeah, those were dark feasts from what I recall, those years for me.
Yeah.
So they said that openly? They're just like saying that openly, that the two of you can't be in the room at the same time?
There were some looks and like some quiet whispers. It wasn't completely overt. I think because I was there, they didn't want to just like spill it all out, I don't think. But Chelsea's like, yeah, we got to leave.
They didn't want to out the secret shame, I guess. Man.
Oh my goodness.
So I guess you were seeing from that, it wasn't all that different from what you had just experienced before coming to the feast.
No, it was just new people that were friendly, and who knows, like I also wasn't a very critical thinker at that point. Like I didn't think for myself at all. So I didn't look too close at a lot of things. Like it's safe to believe what the Bible says. It's safe to do that. And like whatever the people around me are, the status quo, just keep to that. Don't step outside any boxes or think about much.
Right. And you really are trained to set aside your own thoughts and opinions and any idea of critical thinking, like for your entire life. So it's almost, you don't even have to think about it, about not thinking about the thing.
Yeah,
you just don't,
Mm-hmm. So after that feast, we went to California for a while. And at the end of that, we came back for the feast the next year.
Oh, with Crusade?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we spent those 2 in a row at Crusade.
Okay. So you didn't attend like the local Sabbath services with Crusade. It was just these feasts. So you probably kind of saw the best.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the feast is always a time where people are happy and it's kind of festive and there's a lot going on, and the community aspect of it is so strong at the feast because you're spending so much time with all of these people, and a lot of it is organized time. And so I can understand why you had like a positive impression
Mm-hmm.
of Crusade because you weren't there for the, like week in, week out politics and drama and control, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, I was also homeschooled from 2nd grade. So it really, feast time for me at that point in my life was like something I'd never had before. That sense of all around your community.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
it was something that I craved, I think.
Yeah.
And, people my age and from being in a rural place, people your age is minimal.
Yeah. We definitely always looked forward to going to the feast because you would see other kids, other people, that were around your age from other areas in the country. And it was typically a time, at least for me, where I felt like my parents were happier. There seemed to be, I mean, do you feel that way, Matt? Like, I feel like the feast, when I look back, those are good memories, even though I see them in a completely different light now. It was a good
Yeah,
time for our family overall.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from maybe a couple of things here and there, especially later, overall, yeah.
Sure.
And I
Yeah.
think also there's like the mandate, maybe that's too strong of a word, but like the mandate that you're supposed to be happy and rejoicing. So that
Yeah, that's
everybody's like,
true.
yeah, we're happy. Even if you're not having a great time at the moment, you're
You're
happy.
willing
Damn
it.
it.
You are willing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think like, yeah, that was the whole vibe was, it's like going to a party. It's like, you're supposed to be happy. So yeah, let's be
Mm-hmm.
happy.
Yeah. And typically you're not worried about money for that one week. And like there is an abundance. Yeah. So there are things that were good about it.
Oh yeah. So you guys came to the feast in '06 and '07. Of course, you're just like Ashley said,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of getting like the best foot forward of the group and all that stuff. Talk about from, Feast '07
Mm-hmm.
from there for you guys.
Well, we came in for Feast '07 and it was kind of the same thing, just everybody's happy and friendly and we just enjoyed ourselves. And I met a guy and I had decided not to date for a while. Like I left it off for like 6 months or something to get myself straight. And so I told him, I said, if you still want to try this after, in November, because that's when my 6 months is up, then I'm up for it. So but after the feast, we went to Russellville and we ended up living in the church building for a couple months. And that was really interesting.
The whole family?
Yeah, the whole family. There were
Oh,
6 of
wow.
us at that point. So I'm the oldest, and then my sister Brianna, who's Maddie's age, and then 2 younger siblings that my parents adopted. So we got to witness like the comings and goings of everybody for 2 or 3
Interesting.
months. 'Cause I know we were there from feast until the middle to end of November.
This is pre-futon in the office, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well before.
Mhm. Yeah, I actually like the office was where I went to get away from my family.
Oh, man.
Hung out in there a lot by myself.
Excuse me. It's the pastor's lair. It's a God-given title.
Well, that seems so evil.
I know. Lair? You called your room
Step
the lair?
into my lair.
Yeah. You guys were living at the church. What was that like in '08 that you guys were living in the church and came up or down?
Yeah. Well, after Feast in '07. It was definitely like October, November we were in the church for
Oh,
sure.
wow. So quick. It was October, November, like after the feast. I didn't realize it was that bang bang.
And so Dad invited? This was an offer from Dad?
I really have no idea how that happened.
Yeah, I would
It
think
must
so.
have been an invite from your dad because my parents were looking for a new place to be.
Grow the congregation.
Yeah, well, they found us a rental at some point and we stayed there until it was like the end of spring. So we stayed like 6 months, I think. So that in November when I'd said, if you still want to see if there's something there. So I did. It was a long distance thing with Kenneth. Do you remember Kenneth
Yes, but I
from
can't
California?
place his face right now.
And he was affiliated with the church.
He was just kind of in one of those on his own things in California.
But with the same belief system, basically. So it was somebody your parents were okay with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were okay with it. They were approving. But I remember being on the phone with him one time and he asked me, he's like, so does everything seem good there where you're at? Like, does everything seem good with that church? Like, you notice anything weird? And I was like, no, not really. He's like, are you sure? Because I kind of noticed some things. And it kind of made me think about that and look a little harder. But I think his and I relationship for me was just kind of activating my brain. He really pushed me to you like think outside the box and think for myself and just got that ball rolling for me.
Oh.
Even though we ended up, it was a horrible breakup, but it was beneficial. And so with that aspect, I didn't get really pulled into any of the church dramas with the single men.
Thank goodness.
Because that's not where I was focused. That kept me out of trouble. But I remember at one point towards the beginning of the relationship, your dad came to me with this list. And it was a list of all the things, like the criteria of things that had to be met for this to be a viable relationship in their eyes. And I remember thinking, well, okay, this is kind of weird, but like that's not, I don't answer to you, like that was kind of my thinking in my head. I didn't say that. So I was just like, okay. And then I think maybe Sarah brought it up once more, like the list, where you add on the list.
I would love to see this list.
It was like independent living arrangement. At least one of us had to have a car that was in working order.
I'm sorry.
Both of us had to have jobs. There were a few other things, but I don't remember.
What? Like, that's so... I mean, there's so much overreach, obviously, by all of these groups, like the leaders of these groups, but like Dad to just be like, it's not a viable relationship unless there's one working car. I don't even understand where this is coming from. That is so absurd.
Yeah. Preparation for marriage, I think that's where that was coming from.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't even think I kept the list. It's gone. I was like, that's kind of weird. Well, we hadn't been there for very long, like 2 or 3 months at the most.
And so Kenneth came and visited?
He was at the feast with us that year, but I didn't see him again until after we broke up, pretty much, like at the end. Passover. So it was a completely over the phone virtual relationship.
So was this from Dad, as far as you know, like completely independent from like your parents, or did he talk to them? Did they collude? Like what was, I remember some of this like vaguely, but like what was going on?
I think my parents were there when he gave us the list.
That was their notification.
And I don't remember them talking to me about it at all afterwards. My parents were very independent people in the Crusade Church. They weren't going to just follow whatever your dad said either. They never made it into the inner circle because of that reason. Their dress code standards were higher and, I would have never been allowed to wear anything that your dad would have disapproved of. I remember that kind of being hard because, Sarah and Jen had that girls group with Chelsea and Jessica and Brianna, and we could never be a full part of it because Sarah and Jen like to make people over and here, let me help you fit in and feel pretty, and which is really nice. But that was just never an option for me, I felt like. So I felt like the best that I could do was to show up consistently and put my all in fitness group, and maybe I could get by.
I think that is something that is interesting about these groups is because you hear this kind of story repeatedly. People will join cults or high control groups because they want and desire community. And then there is all of this kind of manipulation, though, within the group. It's almost like community is used, like weaponized in a sense. Like if you aren't falling completely in line with the way that is suitable for us, and when I say that, I mean the leadership, then you don't get that full community. Then it's actually like a situation where you're on the outskirts of it, and that is so painful. But it's almost like by the time that happens, you're in a really vulnerable position where you're almost like willing to take breadcrumbs over nothing or over just leaving. And I think that's such a terrible way to control people, using something that is like a basic human need.
Mm-hmm. And I know that we weren't the only ones in that spot,
Yeah.
but it still doesn't make it easy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure with Dad knowing that your parents that I was gathering this as you were speaking, that your parents have demonstrated that they're pretty independent, because they have been with these different groups, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure for Dad, like that was never going to be okay with him. Like the only way to get in the inner circle and to probably participate in services and be really a part of it was going to be like some form of allegiance to him.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little bit useful.
Oh, good.
I was invited to do special music quite a lot. We didn't have too many problems, I don't think, until about midway through being there. Brianna thought Matt was cute, and she made the mistake of saying so to she confided in somebody that leaked the information. So she was like shuttled away
Ugh.
if she got anywhere close to him. They definitely weren't allowed to talk. And I mean, it's just a schoolgirl crush. Like, it wasn't even a serious thing. It's just like, oh, he's cute, It was just.
Did you know that, Matt?
I remember the second part. I don't think I remembered that it was that she confided in somebody and that there was leaked that she had a crush on me. I knew that she did at one point and that they were keeping her away type thing.
It's still so weird to think we're leaking things that 15-year-olds are saying. And I just wondered, Matt, if you didn't know that it's because she said that, did you take that personally? Like, oh, it's me, I can't be trusted, because I know that that's how Dad made you feel. So did you just think, oh yeah, I can't be trusted, so they want to make sure that this girl is not around me?
I think probably. I don't know that I thought it as
Mhm.
succinctly as you just said it, but that, like you said, we've talked about before, there was the whole vibe at that time of you're the F up,
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, you can't be trusted, so we're gonna
Hmm.
keep everybody away. Just like with what Mandy was saying earlier about at the feast, with them kind of keeping Chelsea away type thing. I always assumed it was my fault, kind of, that was why. Which maybe I'm sure that Chelsea felt that way too. But yeah, I think that was probably the vibe with this situation too for me, if I can recall correctly. It's been a long time.
Sad.
Yeah, that's hard. One of the other things that I remember being really hard to handle was we had all gone out for a walk for women's fitness around the lake area or at the park. One of the ladies that was kind of on the edge, she made a comment. I don't remember what it was, but I know it wasn't that bad. And somebody took it as derogatory towards Sarah. And I remember being called in to like a meeting. It was almost like a council thing. And Sarah and Jen were there. And then I was there. I think maybe Chelsea, Sasha was there. And then the lady who supposedly said the offensive thing. And it was just, it was like an inquisition at that lady. Like, what did you say? Why did you say that? How dare you say things like that? And I know that person. She is the softest, kindest heart. And it was just really like, there was nothing that I could say because I didn't really hear her say it. There was nothing I could say to make it better for her. And it was just like, when you say something about this person, it's saying it about God because Larry has given me the authority and you don't do that. And I could just see her like get smaller and smaller in her chair. It made me really want to cry for her.
Why were all of you there? Were you all there like as witnesses to the comment?
I'm sure because we were in the general vicinity when the comment happened. I remember I wasn't feeling particularly able to be helpful. And then, you just keep your head down and stay off the radar because you don't want to get in trouble.
No. You
don't want any of that directed at you.
So was that some of your, I guess, along with the list you got, some of your kind of first view into the dysfunction and kind of the darker parts of what was going on at Crusade?
Yep. And I remember seeing Ashley's picture at your guys' house. I knew it was, your mom had put it in a photo album, I think. And some of us girls were looking through it and we got the impression that, she married somebody outside the church. She married a non-believer. And that's why we don't speak to her.
Wow.
And I thought, well, that's really not a good enough reason. But that's the line we were told.
I didn't know there were any pictures.
Yeah, there were several. There were even a couple of your kids.
Oh, really? They've literally never met them?
Yeah, but they have their photo. It's just as good. Yeah, it's just
as good.
It's an IOU. Yep. No, we did have for a long time behind Dad's chair on the wall next to the front door, the beach photo that you're in. You might remember it. It's like I was, I don't know, 3.
Yeah, I think it's the one that Granddad and Grandma had in the hallway too.
Yeah, it's like at Pensacola that we had that like up there forever. So they weren't super shy about those things and like having your photo around, I guess. It's fun when people say, "Who's that?"
Who's that?
We don't talk about Ashley.
She who shall not be named.
Yeah, it was confusing.
Yeah, I always wonder about that. Like, like how they framed that whole situation with new people who didn't know this story.
A brief 30-second explanation.
That's about right.
And the irony is that he wasn't outside the church, quote unquote. He was still part of, right.
He was outside of Dad's church.
I know. That's what boggles my mind now. After hearing your story, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was like grossly misrepresented.
Well, he wasn't.
Yeah, because the truth sounds bad.
You think so? Yeah. He wasn't converted, is what they thought. And because he wasn't converted enough. He wasn't already baptized. Then we were unequally yoked. So the obvious answer is to just completely cut that person out.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
sorry you went through
Agreed.
that. Yeah, those were the inroads to seeing things weren't always quite what they seemed. I think there's only a couple other things that I noticed before we ended up leaving. My mom would get a little opinionated at times towards the end, or pray too long or louder about the wrong thing, or I don't know what she did all in each of the occasions, but there would be a sermon for her the following week, and she would know that it was to her. And then there was the grandmother of the church. There were also sermons for her. They kind of felt like they were grouped together a lot on that. I think those kind of things were kind of like, my parents say that during one of the worship services, they both heard that they were to go home to Montana. And why they say they left. And I don't have any other reason to believe otherwise. But I know it was getting more and more controversial for us to stay.
They heard that as in like a divine, they felt like it was a divine message, or they heard someone in the congregation.
They felt like it was a divine message
Yeah.
for them to go home. So it wasn't very long after that we went back to Montana.
How did you feel about that? About going back to Montana?
I mean, I think I got my own theories on how they heard what they heard. But at the time, I mean, I was raised to, the message growing up was young women on their own. It's not safe for them. They're easily deceived. That's not something you do. You stay home until you get married.
Mm-hmm.
So I was 22, I think, at that point. I felt like I had no choice but to go with them.
Right. I understand that.
I don't know that I would have felt at home enough to stay.
Yeah.
I think I just felt like, well, I guess that's what we're doing.
So when you left, who did you affiliate with, or where did you, I guess I want to ask, did you go back to where you lived before in Montana in the same rural town?
We did. By then, there was a united branch of the church.
Oh, okay. Okay, so then you did have a congregation to attend with then.
Mm-hmm.
And had you been indoctrinated against United, just through Crusade or any of the other Sabbath keeping groups? Because they were all so competitive with each other, and who's really the right one, who's carrying on the torch of Herbert Armstrong, and so I'm curious, if that was almost taboo from what you had been told from other groups like Crusade.
I mean, my parents, the renegades that they are,
Yeah.
I gotta love that about them, because they do
Yeah.
go where they feel like they should be. They more took that as negative things about corporate leadership, and they tended to judge each group based on the people in the group and not on the corporate structure. So, being that it was one of the only congregations in the area and the people were nice,
Yeah.
we decided to go. And it worked out for quite a while. It worked out really well until the pastor corporate decided that he was in the running for a regional pastorship. And then things started to change. And in that time, I met my ex-husband, and we got married and had a kid or two. We rented from a friend of my family to start off, and I found out about a year and a half into it, maybe, that he hadn't been paying the rent.
Oh, no.
So the landlord eventually brought in that pastor to kind of mediate and say, well, this family's in your congregation, you're responsible for them. What are you going to do about it?
Oh boy.
And the pastor got really, really upset because we weren't officially members. And my husband at the time, he wasn't baptized in United. So the pastor, I remember being on the phone with him and him saying, well, your husband isn't even saved. Like, he may be in the church, but, he's not baptized with us. So we don't really count that. And that made me really angry.
Mm-hmm.
Not for the fact of whether my husband is or isn't, because what business and what right does he have to judge that? So it got really uncomfortable for me with that and with the financial thing. And by that time, I think we had 3 kids under the age of 4. So, I was home. I felt really helpless to do anything about any of it. I felt like it had been hidden from me in the first place. So, with that discomfort between the pastor and my husband and myself, we just decided not to go anymore.
So then what did you do when you stopped?
Oh, we found some sermon CDs from other places that we listened to for a while. And then gradually things started to not make sense to me anymore. Like head coverings. My oldest daughter has like beautiful red hair. And I was like, how could anybody decide that should be covered up?
Right.
So then like head coverings were in question for me. And so each thing like that happened, I questioned more and more.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling at one point, if I keep questioning this, then I'm going to have to question the whole thing.
Right.
At the time, my husband at the time, he was angry enough at the church to, kind of create a space where I could do that. And I just went all in looking at like different evidences for and against everything.
Wow.
And I finally decided that it wasn't for me.
If you like this episode, please go leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever that is. If it's Apple, Spotify, or another service, it's really helpful. And don't forget to subscribe so that you can get notified when we have new episodes and updates and things like that. Thanks, and we'll talk to you all again next week.